Right. Listen, amongst all this, I didn't expect that some weirdness would happen. That is why we're talking to Lee Vandervis next, not because Lee's weird, but because this extraordinary story that's just come out of Dunedin, which rather highlights the comment of the Prime Minister this week when he was asked about the turnout for local government, said, well, he thought that one of the primary reasons was the quality of local government candidates, which is an observation, if you remember, I made last week. That one of the reasons that so few people turned out is that there was a lack of inspirational leaders at local government level in New Zealand, and boy, I've seen that, man, on a big scale down here, but then I don't think here's any exception from the rest of New Zealand. And as a consequence of that, people have been elected into positions that, well, you know, almost by default, and the lack of enthusiasm for local government in general has never been better illustrated than this most recent election, where the turnout is less than 50%. It's not dramatically lower than previous years, but it's not good. I think it's the lowest since postal voting was brought in as a general rule throughout the country. But in that sort of milieu, some weird stuff happened, and we talked about those mayors that lost it. The three heads of local government New Zealand, Sam Broughton, who, good God, is hanging on for dear life to that role. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. The Mayor of Selwyn, the Mayor of Dunedin, Jules Radich, the Mayor of the Rural Vice Chair of Local Government New Zealand, all involved, steeped in Local Government New Zealand, all got completely dicked at the last election, or last Saturday, by their local electors, and perhaps that's a huge commentary on Local Government New Zealand as well. But yeah, but there's weird stuff that's happened. In my neck of the woods, literally in my local council now, the local council elected a man by the name of Dave Anderson. Now, I've got to say, I don't know Mr. Anderson, so everything that I'm about to say to you is all that I've read. So I'm no better versed than that. But Dave Anderson was elected as a councillor to the Central Otago District Council. He was standing for the first time. He was standing, you got read as 150 words. There's a photo of him, not a particularly good one, I have to say. He's sort of a lumpen-looking chap, probably be 60 plus. And mind you, I'm not that particularly good looking either, so I shouldn't be commenting on the observations of others. He got elected. He's resigned before the council's even been inaugurated, because it transpired that after the election he had been involved in a dispute with the Central Otago District Council, at which they accused him of doctoring invoices because he was a contractor to the council 7 years ago and just adding bits of money. And they did an investigation, they ended his contract, and they required him to pay some money back. If that information had been known to the electors of Central Otago District Council, one would imagine they might not have elected Mr. Anderson to that particular position, but they did. Initially he was defiant and said it was a civil issue, not a criminal issue, which is true. I'm going to stay. Yesterday morning he resigned under pressure, saying he could no longer handle the pressure, and a lot of people can't when the media start knocking at your door, and that in the interest of the family, his family, he was off. Well, another issue has now arisen of an even more bizarre case, and this is where our next guest comes in, and it's the election to the Dunedin City Council of a person who would appear to be of Chinese extraction, who doesn't live, it would appear, in Dunedin, whose name is Benedict Ong. Now, you're going to hear this story in the days and weeks that are about to come. Benedict Ong, O-N-G. And at that stage, this mystery man, we should be introducing Lee Vandervis, newly elected, ever popular councillor of Dunedin, to the show. Lee, welcome to the show, mate. Lovely to have you on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good to see you again.
Mate, just first things first, before we go on to this particular issue, Christopher Luxon's comment that one of the reasons that turnout was so low is because of the paucity of quality candidates in local government. Does that strike you as being fair enough?
Maybe. My view is that being a city councillor these days is asking for such a rough ride. that a whole lot of people that would actually be very useful on council, especially people who are business people and who have, business reputations they need to maintain, they simply won't run because you don't get to do much as a city councillor. You're basically pimple on the bum of bureaucracy, I think is my favourite phrase for being an elected representative. And the other thing is that for most business types, it just so hungry for time, and
Yeah, yeah.
it just wouldn't be worth their while, especially in terms of reputation. You're going to get torn to bits by social media if you ever put your head above the parapet. So we've got a whole lot of people on council that don't put their head above the parapet and get on it as a sort of, I don't know, alternative to activism
Yeah, I've
or an
got to be honest
extension
with you,
of it.
mate. When there was a video that was put out, when you guys all got dressed up to do with the Dunedin hospital, and I looked at all the Reading a Hospital and singing that ridiculous song, and I've got to be honest with you, mate. At that stage, I just went. I mean, it was an FSS moment for me. A lot of
Mm.
the leading community and business leaders of Dunedin didn't stand. They used to stand, as you well know, when you first lived in Dunedin. Is that the reason? Too much time, too little effort, too little impact upon staff, and everybody hates you. Those are the three primary reasons why the quality of candidates is so low.
I think they are certainly major contributing ones.
All right. Okay. Well, here's a good example though of how bad it's got. Benedict Ong stood for the Dunedin City Council, and he stood as the mayor. I noticed that he didn't live in Dunedin. He said he didn't live in Dunedin. I think he was the only one of the mayoral candidates or council candidates that didn't. And he didn't do particularly well either. He ran for both the mayor and the council. He didn't do well enough, but ironically, what got him on, despite doing poorly, was that you elect 14 councillors and you've got an STV system there. And lo and behold, Benedict Ong was elected as a councillor, I think on I'm just reading this at the moment, 84th iteration. He wasn't the bottom, but he was elected on the 84th iteration as a councillor for the Dunedin City Council. But you and a number of others have raised a number of issues, including does he exist? Well, he does. Is his background fair enough? Is he a strange or unusual person? And should he be on your council? And this is before he's even got sworn in. Can you give us some background, please?
I was astounded at the kind of rhetoric that I had to listen to from Mr. Ong on at least a dozen mayoral platforms prior to the election. The claims that he was making that he was a vice president and associate director at leading global banks, for instance. He on his site he said Royal Bank of Canada, Robobank International, UOB Bank, Bank Saracen Rabo. He claimed that he was a high-profile vice president of international banks and that he had some secret formula that was going to sort out the Dunedin debt. I couldn't believe that people actually went for it and
Okay, so
voted
he was
for him.
half mad then.
To,
He had a specious CV. That's what you're saying to me. And did he ever provide any evidence as to his financial or commercial background?
no, and he's been challenged a number of times, and he just doesn't. He keeps just repeating that he is an international banker and that he has the answers for Dunedin. And I had completely written him off during the election campaign as being kind of less entertaining than the
Other
vampire
than the
candidate
vampire.
that we had.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, at least the vampire candidate had some entertaining value and actually had a wee bit of philosophy to impart. Mr. Ong was simply a on repeat, self claiming international banker that was going to sort out the debt problems and things for Dunedin. It was just patently absurd. I'd written him off. since he got elected, which I still find really bizarre. And you mentioned the 84th iteration on STV to do it. I haven't checked the STV figures, but I've been a long critic of STV. It seems to throw up all sorts of unlikely individuals. It's not a proper STV system anyway. It was modified a couple of decades ago by some people from Internal Affairs that have since moved on. Anyway, I did some investigation into whether his claims could possibly be true, and I didn't think they were possibly true just from the outset. But if you Google any of these claims that he's made, you find that certainly there is information suggesting that he held vice president, associate director roles, but they're all claims that he made. And what's missing in all the Google searches is records independent of online services. For online sources. So there are no independent sources online on Google. So, but a lot of people are a bit cynical about Google. I went further, so I got onto Perplexity AI, which is a search engine that has a much wider reach in some respects. And again, it says that there are no independently stated and publicly acknowledged official profiles for any of these banks. So it's not possible that he's held these positions that he claims. It's not possible that he's had the work experience that he claims. And yet somehow he seems to have got himself elected.
No, it's extraordinary. And it's even more extraordinary because a whole series of councillors, I think 4 or 5, lost their seats in the election, who had put in sterling work and are well known in your community to what seems to be a fantasist. All right, but that's not just the only thing. I think yesterday I saw, and you probably are aware, shared by another of your council-elects, I won't name her, views that some of his behaviour around Dunedin has been disturbing as well.